Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Board, this August 9th, 2018. I'll accept a motion for the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We will proceed to the first item, which is an interview for the alternate member position, Rebecca Lewis. If you'd like to
Stop. Jump up here.
Yep.
Would you please?
Please.
Thank you.
Just for the record, your name and address.
My name's Rebecca Lewis. I live at 390 Hatherley Road in Scituate.
And would you tell us something about yourself?
So I've lived in Scituate about 25 years, little over 25 years. I've raised 4 children here. Still have got one in the high school. I'm an attorney. Took out some time off when I was home with my children, and now I've recently started to do some more residential work. I do some work for other towns, just more title work, trying to figure out who owns property. Okay.
All right.
Great.
So I will open it up to the board for questions. All right, I guess it's you.
Oh, okay. If you want to go in any order, it's up to you.
No, Steve, go for it.
I guess the initial question I have is, what interests you in joining the planning board?
I've been thinking about it for a little while.
Could you just turn the mic a
Sorry.
little bit toward you?
Okay. Yep. Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Oh, we could hear you.
We
Anyway.
can hear
It's
you.
for the
It's
Okay.
TV.
So I actually have been thinking about it for a while. A friend of mine had suggested it a couple years ago. I love this town. I think it's a great town. And I know that you guys have a lot of challenges in Scituate. Housing, I know the state is mandating some things. There's a lot of projects going on. And I just felt like it was something I wanted to get involved in. I know a lot of times you're just enforcing bylaws, which I feel like I can certainly do that. But I know also there's a bigger plan for this town. So I thought I would like to get involved in seeing what I could do with that.
That's great. I mean, I think that sort of motivated a lot of us to get here. It is a lot of work.
It seems like a lot of work.
It's a heavy commitment, I think, every other Thursday night. So what do you see as the biggest challenges to the town at this point?
I know we have to get some more affordable housing in this town, so I think that's a big challenge. I'd like to see the town be able to stay, what it's like today, where it's a mix of people, that the prices seem to keep going up, real estate taxes keep going up, so I think that's a problem. I just love the dynamics of this town the way it is. It's a diverse group of people to a certain extent. And I also think I'd love to see North Scituate maybe get some sewer and be revitalized. That's kind of a sad little area town. I think the harbor looks so great with all the development that's happened there, so it'd be nice to see it happen in another place and maybe get a few more commercial buildings just for our taxes. Obviously, the water is a huge issue.
Ben?
I guess as an offshoot to Steve's question, a lot of those, that's a great answer, and a lot of those concerns, I think all of us on the board are pretty with on current challenges facing the town. But I was just curious, in your opinion, what do you think maybe 25 years or something like that, what do you foresee as being kind of future challenges as we go forward in time in this community?
Well, obviously, the sewer system, is a big problem. I mean, I'm hoping that would be resolved in less than 25 years. The coastal might be a problem. What's going on there, losing some of the land. And being able to live in this town, being able to afford to live in this town. But again, you don't know really what's going to go on with the real estate market. Something could happen, but it just seems to be going up and up and up. So 25 years, I think those might still be some of our issues.
Yeah.
I'm sure the coastline's going to be a huge issue in 25 years, and maintaining houses that the storms are just killing. I mean, last year, since I've lived here, I've never seen anything happen like last year.
Yeah.
Never seen waves come out of the harbor, let's put it that way.
Bill?
Yeah, assuming that you agree that there's a need to increase business and commerce, what kind of thinking do you have about that?
I'm sorry,
Looking to, how do you think we could increase business and commerce?
well, for instance, in North Scituate, you would have to have sewer system in there, so that could happen. And I know that you're trying to do some stuff around Greenbush, so if that continues, that would be great. But we also have so much residential property that it's hard to kind of squeeze it in places. It seems to be one of the major problems. I mean, I don't think we want huge businesses here, but maybe a little more business, even, we have some great just small shops downtown. Those are great to have, but it would be nice to see a few more in other places around the town.
Okay.
Could I ask a follow-up, just a question,
Yep.
and it really pertains to your background, I guess, that you're working in now in real estate. As you've been working in the real estate, and I assume it's on the transaction side of selling houses and all of that, what have you run across in terms of issues that might relate to what we're doing here on the planning board? Are there concerns or issues about how the town's managing any of this stuff? I mean, I'm just curious
I
to
have
see
not
what
heard
you-
anything like that.
Uh-huh.
And for a long time, I was subcontracting out to another law firm and doing other work, so I've more recently been doing P&S work.
Mhm.
So, and not always in this town, so I really don't have an answer for that question, I'm
Really
sorry.
more P&S than development type work? You haven't been involved in
No.
real estate development,
No.
so to speak? Okay. Thank you.
I guess my question would be is how do you feel about the zoning bylaws? And that's a big challenge for us.
Right.
And what your legal expertise would bring and help us in crafting new bylaws and zoning issues in general.
Well, yeah, I know that there are a lot of zoning issues here. You're always going to have to relook at the bylaws, I think, because the town is evolving, things change. I mean, you have that whole bylaw in regards to marijuana. We wouldn't have had that 10 years ago, right? But, I mean, I'm hoping if you need help trying to rewrite some of the bylaws, I would be able to do that.
All right, so here you are, you've been in town for 25 years, and have you ever observed the board before, or you watch it on TV?
I've watched it on television.
And
Or you.
How much you yell at us, we don't answer.
it can be very interesting. How about the amount of time that you could give? I mean, you understand what an alternate, the position entails. And basically, you're allowed to speak on any subject, et cetera. If there's a full complement, if the 5 are here, unfortunately, you cannot vote. But if somebody's missing, yes, you can vote.
Okay.
Okay? I was an alternate at one point.
I was.
She was, and I've been on the planning board off and on for now 9 years. I get on, I get voted off, I get on, and so it goes. But it's a great board. It really is. And it actually has a tremendous amount of impact on this town.
It seems like it does.
Yes, it does. And you feel you can bring your expertise?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because we're working on a master plan.
Yep.
We're working on sewer and water. We have some really big developments that have been approved that need to be watched over. Not that that's our job, but it's the planner's job. So, I mean, those are the things that are on our plate. Plus Form As and administrative site plan review, et cetera, et cetera. Do you feel comfortable working along those lines?
I do feel comfortable working with those.
Okay, all right, thank you. Karen, do you have anything?
No, I think she's answered a lot of the questions that, pertain to the board.
Okay, all right. Anything else from the board? Steve, you have to have another question.
I
Come on.
probably have 4 or 5, but I think you've answered a lot of them. I would say one of the primary focuses we're going to have in the next year is updating the town master plan, which is a responsibility of the planning board. So I would say, on top of everything else we're doing, it's probably going to take a little more time because I'm envisioning we're going to have a lot of sort of public sessions that
Okay.
will require support as well. So just as you think about this, I think that's going to be a kind of a near-term demand on people's time, I would expect.
Have you started that master plan?
The RFP
Or
for the
started the update
consultant.
of it?
Yeah, the RFP for the consultant is due to be issued pretty soon, another week or two, or has it gone out yet?
The RFP is out right now.
It's out, yeah.
It's out right now.
So we're hiring an outside consultant to support that effort because we wouldn't have the time to do it here. But, there's a public process that goes with it that while we would get help in sort of managing that process, it's really the participation that counts. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
Okay.
And I think that's it. I think
Do you
we've
have
sort
any
of covered.
questions for us? Anything you'd like to know about us?
No, so how much time do you put in each week? A lot, right? I can tell by the way.
Yeah, I do.
There's a meeting every other Thursday for the
Right.
most part,
Yeah.
but there's also a lot of homework.
There's
A
homework,
lot of pieces of paper
right,
come flying at
and
us.
phone calls and follow-ups and
Site visits.
site visits, we
Okay.
wander around.
Particularly site visits.
A lot of site
You go out
visits.
and you're headed out to the grocery store and you find yourself two developments later.
And then also too, some of us, all of us are liaisons to different boards. I hit the selectmen whenever they're around, and I do CPC and economic development. And Patty, yours, what do you?
I do Board of Health, Conservation, and Historic.
Traffic rules and regulations. Ben does zoning.
Water resource zoning and now design review.
Right, and you?
I don't do any.
No, you're doing master plan. That's your job.
Master plan, that sounds like a huge job.
And water and sewer. I mean, that's his bailiwick. That's what he enjoys, I hope.
And we all have, most of us anyway have daytime jobs, right? So we understand the challenges that go with participating in this. So we're glad to see you apply, actually.
Actually,
And
we're thrilled that people have applied. We really are thrilled,
Yes.
so.
one other question. I know we haven't selected anybody, we haven't
Right.
appointed anybody, but would it be your intention to participate and ultimately run for a full-time position?
Perhaps, yep. I mean, everyone's sitting on the board right now, right? There isn't any openings.
Well, we
at
get
this point.
turnover,
Okay.
periodically, so.
Well, I was an alternate and somebody left, so here I am.
Okay.
And Patty
Same with
was an
me.
alternate and somebody left, and there she
Yes, I
is.
know. Mhm.
So you just never know what's
Okay.
going to happen. Things change.
Well, if that happened, yes, I would do that full-time.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you
for
so
coming
much for your
in.
time.
Thank you.
One other thing. Once we decide on whoever we want, type of thing, we have to go before the selectmen because it's a joint meeting
Okay.
for them to vote.
Okay,
Okay? Just to let you know.
thank you.
Mr. Fiore.
Good to see you all.
If you would identify yourself for the record and your address.
Thomas Fiore, 12 Meeting House Lane, Unit 203, here in Scituate.
I have to say that Tom Fiore and I went to high school together.
There you go.
We did.
So you can't ask him any embarrassing questions.
So well, actually, I'm not, that was 50 years ago.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. So at any rate, I do know of him. So, okay, we'll start with our questions. Steve, you again.
Well, I'm going to ask the same question I asked the last time, which is why the planning board? What interests you in it?
Well, I think throughout my career in retail business, and I worked for a fairly large company and worked for myself over the last 20 years or so. My wife and I have been in business together. Our plan, our thinking is always what comes next, where should we position ourselves to be ready for the next trend, or more importantly, trying to understand our customer and what they're looking for. And in the same token here in town, all of us have wants and needs living here, certain protections, and I think in my life, in my career, it's working outside of Scituate. I have the opportunity now where my primary business is here in Scituate, live in Scituate, been here for 30 years, to bring the same kind of thought to the planning board, and try, because I will tend to say, well, we're going this direction. Have we also considered this other aspect? I tend to think that way. It drives my wife crazy sometimes, but nevertheless, there's so many different avenues that we all look at our town, and we tend to always want to say, well, I need to fix this now, I need to fix this now, but as you folks know very well, if we pre-plan something, we don't have to fix this now because it's already been attended to. My brain tends to work that way. It's a good time in my life to give back, if you will, bring the knowledge that I have developed over the last 40 years and work for the town benefit. My kids went to school here. As I said, I run my business here in Scituate, so it's someplace that, and we will be here for the next 30 or 40 years, or however long we have to be here. And my thinking is I have 10 years or so to make this as something that I can contribute. So I see it as more or less a 10-year project.
Mm-hmm. Do you see anything in particular? Are there any issues in particular that sort of brought you here, or that are sort of on top of your mind or list?
Well, I did have a thought recently, as an example. This may be something that's already been discussed. I'm not sure. But over on the other side of Clapp Road, where there's the highest point in Scituate, I believe there's a conservatory area there. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of that, there's watershed area. And on the south side, there's one of the lowest areas in Scituate, where I know a friend of mine, Gene DeVargian, lives in that area. And he said in the summertime, they used to run cows down beside his property down into the low area for water, because it would fill with water. And I thought it might be an interesting idea or something to look into, to say, can we actually build a pond? Can something like that bring us to a point where maybe water plus like Cohasset, as opposed to water negative, as we have been and will continue to be. Understanding the issues about pipes and so on and so forth, getting away from that for a moment, we're all beating that to death for sure. Is there any possibility of actually creating more water for us, or some way of gathering it that's cost-effective and will be useful for not only 5 or 10 years, but 50 or 100 years down the line? Obviously, our town can only grow so big, and we're probably coming close to that, reasonably close to that spot where we're not going to grow a lot more, but our use of everything will certainly depend on it. That was a thought I had. Another one, looking forward, will our town age? Will the younger population be reduced? How is the school systems going to contract? If that happened in Cohasset, the school systems contracted. That's something that will definitely need to be in some kind of planning stage, whether that relates to the board itself right now, but it certainly could be a concern in the town 20, 30 years from now. So there's a couple of things that have crossed my mind as when the time comes might be interesting to look into.
Ben?
So, all right, I have a question. Obviously, right now the real estate market is doing very well, and so is the development industry. Driving around town, it's apparent that those industries are alive and well in our town. What are both some positives and some negatives, in your opinion, with the current state of development and planning going on in our town?
Well, I see development two ways. Building a new home or a new subdivision is a development. But that's probably a small part of the business that's going on in that industry. It's remodeling is far bigger part of the business of the building industry than it is building new developments. I happened to be looking at the town website this morning, and there is a development going in over on Ann Vinyl. And what was interesting to me is that the date on the original site map was 1997. It was 21 years ago. There seems to be something odd about that. I don't suspect.
Wait, I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, if the development was a good development, why did it take so long to get here? Or, on the other hand, if there was big problems, should it be developed in the first place? So, as an outsider, not knowing what went through that process, it makes me certainly question it in any case. But getting back to your original question, everything that every home, every business, every building constantly has to be updated to stay relevant. So if our community is going to be a relevant community going forward, we constantly have to redevelop. How is that? But we're not going to redevelop for the sake of the developers. We redevelop for the sake of our community, to keep it, again, new water sources or new construction, to make the town attractive and enjoyable place to live in. So I tend to see it that way more than, oh my God, we're building 75 new houses here. So I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah. That's good, thanks.
Bill?
Yeah, I noticed on your business card that you're at 50 Country Way.
We will be at some point in time.
Okay, let me tell you what the two questions are.
Excuse me?
What prompted you to go there? And what would it take to, what did you see that was attractive to you that could also be attractive to other businesses?
Good question. We're opening a kitchen and bath showroom. And my primary customer is the builder and architect, because they will refer their customers to me. And a customer that's referred to me is a customer that will have a level of trust in what I provide because somebody they've already hired is sending this way. So thinking in terms of that professional and a commercial person, I wanted to be set in a commercial zone as opposed to renting space downtown, which I love and have loved for 30 years. But it's not the right place for us for that kind of business. You know, we're not trying to attract the tourist trade, and we're trying to be in a setting that's contemporary and will fit a current person's eye as far as their home would be concerned. So we wanted to be in a commercial setting that was centrally located between Scituate, Cohasset, Norwell, Marshfield, easy to get to, and the new construction was a plus. So being in the building new things business, again, it made a lot of sense. In this particular case, where the landlord is able to build the space to our liking, and it worked out well. As a retailer or business person, it's interesting because he's treating the commercial space very much like he is treating the apartments. So rent is all inclusive. And normal business leases, we're paying taxes and insurance and common area charges and so on, where here we're not. So one, the charges are moderate. I was the first one in, signed the lease last November. We're supposed to be open in February.
Still waiting.
Still waiting. So I was able to negotiate a good lease as well.
Is that where you are?
We'll be in the front building. The one that you know is being designed similar to the original building that was there, which was also a plus from our design mind.
Yeah. Kinda right on the
And
street.
we'll be taking approximately 2,000 feet, which is about 2/3 of that first floor.
What do you think of the changes that are going on in Greenbush?
I'm sorry?
What do you think of the changes that are going on in Greenbush?
My first home was on Colonial Way, which is right up the street from Greenbush. And when people have made that comment, I'm saying, well, you're changing Greenbush. I said, yeah, but from what? You know, it was not a particularly attractive area. Maybe I'm being hard on myself, but having lived there. But I think if anything that, let me back this up. The Morning Glory's business was very nice. The building was decrepit and falling down. The rest of the space behind there was a junkyard. Now it's not. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think development in that Greenbush area is probably one of the best spots in town that we have an opportunity to do that. It's been a small business zone for ever since I can remember, and to expand on that, I think probably makes some sense. You know, I don't live around the corner from there, haven't for a number of years. So I would be very mindful that whatever is done there, it's not the kind of business that we have dump trucks and that kind of thing going in there, but businesses that are related to our community needs, doctors, dentists, attorneys' offices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that would be best suited for that space, or that kind of business.
Thank you.
And Bill took my question. I wanted to know how he felt about the overlay district in Greenbush, but thank you. You answered my question.
Okay,
You can use it next time.
Pardon me?
You can have it for next time.
Thank you, okay.
okay.
Everybody seems to have asked the necessary questions. You understand the alternate position. You attend every other Thursday evening. I think it's the second and fourth Thursday of the month. You can participate on everything but 50 and 52 Country Way. Okay? Because there would be a
Of course.
conflict, okay. If one of us is missing and a vote has to be taken, then the alternate gets to vote.
Right.
If everybody's here, no. You just have to sit there and not vote.
That does not mean you can't speak.
That's right, you can say,
It's
Well,
just,
I think
it's just on voting.
exchanging ideas is what this is all about.
yes, it is. And that's what, okay, I was involved when the alternate first came to be.
Sure.
And there were two ways of looking at the alternate. The first was the alternate would sit there and wear beige, and that would be the end of it. And then all of a sudden it evolved
Right.
into someone who could participate. So whomever is sitting over there will participate, and their opinions will be valued, because that's the way it should be.
And,
I will say, it's more than just an exchange of ideas. We have
of course.
regulations, bylaws that we're required to enforce, right? And so we do have a set of, legal guidelines that we're implementing as well. It's not just, a conversation, so.
In my experience, I do not have a lot of direct experience in the Massachusetts laws that the board will follow, 40, 48, 15, 40B, and so on. I do have, when I was in the retail business, it was a family-owned company, and one of my jobs was to read or to negotiate leases with landlords. Some of our leases were 120, 130 pages long. It's something that we became customary. We're back probably in 1973, a typical lease was 6 pages, and by 1985, it was well over 100. There's so many things written into laws and proposals that folks do that it's very easy to glaze over things that are very important. And it's those little things that we can miss that can really cause us issues in the future. So I tend to have an eye for those kinds of things. But I'll also come at things, my other thing is my design eye, and something like CVS Pharmacy downtown isn't particularly attractive. So,
But, and that raises a very valid point. Sometimes things come before the planning board, and when an item comes in, whether it's a house, or a business, whatever, if it meets all of the rules and all of the regulations, and even though we don't like it, and even though we don't want it, we would be hard-pressed to vote against it.
that's right, and we're having that problem now with new housing, and people saying, how can you have new housing when we have a water shortage? And there's rules and regulations that cover that. You can't do as a board or me as a citizen anything that we want. We can do anything that conforms to.
You have to follow the rules, and we have
Absolutely.
to follow the regulations, and sometimes we have to hold our nose, but that's the way it is.
And I think any developer that we talk to, if the planning board has a reasonable request, that fits the town better. Many times, Toll Brothers, that this is being developed or designed someplace, who knows, Texas, who knows where that was designed.
I would guess North Carolina.
Yeah.
Sure. And as I read through some of that documentation, and there was a number of things that was suggested, whether it was the entrance and so on and so forth, and I believe, if I read it right, that they're probably complying to some of those suggestions. You have to be able to work with people, and I think...
And we do, we negotiate.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of it. But as long as someone meets the rules and regulations, and then that means that at some point, maybe we need to change some of those rules and regulations.
Indeed.
Make them work better
Right.
for the town.
Right.
So we will let you know
Okay.
what we're going to do, and there will be a joint meeting of the selectmen and the planning board to decide, to vote on who we will bring on board.
Sure. And whether you choose me or not at this point, there may be some point down the line where you can use an extra person to look at this or do that, or I'd certainly be available. My schedule is I work probably half-time now, so I basically have the other half to do whatever I want with, and basically, and I'm saying,
See ya.
I can do something here. This is probably more in I've worked and I've had 300 employees. I've had 2. I've been everywhere in between. And your best effort is coming to a consensus, listening to all the best ideas, the hard work that everybody puts into things, and making sense of the rules compared to the requests, and what is in our best needs as citizens here in Scituate. I think it's an awesome responsibility. It's the place where I would want to be.
We're here because we love it.
Yeah,
I think. So again, Tom, thank you so much.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for your interest.
All right.
Have a good evening.
You too. All right, we now have an overview of Recreation Commission field plan. Dan Finley, if you'd like to come up, please. Good evening.
Point of information before we go.
Yes.
What's going to be the process from here?
I can explain what the
All right.
process from here is. It's going to have to be a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, and it's a roll call vote.
This works.
So,
Should we not make a recommendation?
Yes, we
yes,
will.
you will make a recommendation, and the Board of Selectmen is either August 21st is their next meeting, or September 4th is the meeting after that.
Okay.
We may want to wait till the September 4th meeting, because there's another item we want to get on the August 21st meeting, which we'll get to a little bit later. And we would ask whoever you recommend to try to come to that meeting as well.
And would we have those discussions about a recommendation in executive session?
I don't know if I don't
All
know.
right, you can figure that out.
All right, moving along. If you will introduce yourself and,
Sure. My name's Dan Fenley, 10 Highland Crossing.
okay,
One,
yes, thank you,
better.
better.
My name's Dan Fenley, 10 Highland Crossing. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Recreation Commission.
I'm Jennifer McMillan, 34 Thomas Ave, and I'm the chairperson of the Recreation Commission.
First of all, I'd like
I
to,
didn't get that. You're the chair of
Yes.
the Recreation Commission, you're the vice chair?
Vice Chair, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
You will have to speak up because we have this air conditioner
Okay.
behind us. It's like being at Logan Airport. If you can.
I can hear it from here.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
outside, though.
Yeah, it's preset, you can't,
You can't mess with it.
you can't change the
locked out.
fan, it's locked
I
out.
tried it already.
It's locked out to us. Because they're
You have to call
programmed,
Schneider Electric.
they're programmed to come on and
Or
off at
Amoresco.
certain times.
All right, so you'll just have to speak up so that we can hear you.
Well, my wife usually accuses me of speaking too loud to her, so I hopefully I'll do well tonight.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to present this plan that the Recreation Commission has worked on. If I could leave you with 3 phrases tonight: maintenance, not enough, and overused is basically how I would describe the plan in 3 simple phrases. 2 years ago, the Rec Commission created a field subcommittee in order to develop a master plan for field use in Scituate. The purpose was to look at town-owned outdoor athletic fields and other town parcels for potential future use. The plan was based on the work of the Recreation Field Use Subcommittee, which I just mentioned, the Recreation Commission, the Recreation Department, and a study that was commissioned by the Rec Department that was done by Traverse Landscape Architects. I would like to give special recognition, because this was a lot of work over the last 2 years. I'd like to give special recognition to Gary Meyerson, Jackie Carr-Comerford, Bill Lewett from the high school, Maura Glancy from the Rec Department, and Sean O'Connor, who attended, I think, every subcommittee meeting and participated with a lot of good ideas. The purpose of the plan was to develop a strategy for investment for the town, provide the greatest improvement in the athletic field for the funds with the funds available, to access the current athletic fields and projected recreational needs of the town, and guide future decisions and capital improvement planning. What we saw over the past years was things happening with the fields that were what I call one-offs. We'd fix one problem and another problem would pop up. We didn't see a plan from the Rec Commission, so that's why we developed this plan. Included in the plan was an inventory of all the fields and the current use of the fields. We surveyed every youth group in Scituate as well as the schools. We took an inventory of the town property and the existing conditions of the existing fields and developed concepts and recommendations for improvements. The sites included all the town-owned fields. I'm not going to go through the list of them. And we also looked at properties in town that could be used for potential future use in field. And when we surveyed the properties in Scituate that were owned by the town, that weren't conservation, et cetera, there basically were 3 properties that were left in town. And that's it, that you could put a field on. For the requirements for a field, about 2 acres, not in wetlands, et cetera. So we came up with 3 properties that were potential for future use. The key findings of the study, and the Rec Department commissioned a study by the Traverse Landscape Architects, and they developed a study that was about 80-some pages long. The key findings of that study were many. One was Scituate has considerably less fields than most other towns, not just locally, but nationally. They're intensely overused based on the population that exists today and the use of the fields that exist today. The town's in need of additional fields to support the town and the high school, as well as to allow for the maintenance and rest of the existing fields we have. There are, I'm sure you're aware, Title IX issues at the high school with girls softball, with women's softball, and there's an issue with the turf and track at the high school that is in dire need of repair. The other recommendation was that synthetic turf was recommended where appropriate, and that would help reduce irrigation of the fields and water use on the fields. Hopefully, it would reduce the maintenance costs of the fields. The big thing is that it does provide configuration flexibility. You can get better use of the fields with turf by configuring multiple fields on the same space, depending on who's using them and what time of year.
Before you go on from that list,
Yes.
if I could ask, is it okay if we ask questions
Yes,
going along?
no, sure, go ahead.
Okay. The first item that you identified there, less fields than most of the surrounding towns, I didn't see anything that sort of articulated or showed that comparison. Did anybody look at, I mean, are there numbers? Is there data that's part of it? I didn't see it in the other study, so I guess I'm trying to understand how big that is. You know, do other towns have 20 fields and we have 15, or is it 100 versus 15? You know, I
It's
guess
more
I'm trying
the,
to put it in perspective here.
it's more we're lacking a few fields. I'd say a few fields. It's not 100 versus 15. The study didn't go into specifics with data on that, but they did note that many other towns have more fields for the population. If you look at similar towns of Scituate with population and the usage of the fields from the use, we have about 5,000 users of the field, that we were lacking in the number of fields that we needed to rest the fields. There are matrix, there is data, there is data on the usage of the field and how many events you should have on a particular location without overusing the field. And that is, I'm not sure that's included in the study. I don't think they did include that in the study, but there are other studies out there that talk about number of events per field and when you need to rest the field, et cetera, particularly the grass fields.
And in sort of looking at that, are you also looking at a broader horizon? I mean, this feels like it's a pretty long plan that you've laid out here. So did this also integrate sort of demographics and growth and/or decreases in school-age kids and that kind of stuff? Has that all been integrated in here?
Well, what we did was we took a survey of the population of the town and who used the fields, what sports they were, what age groups, et cetera. My idea was to have the rec commission do that survey every few years. I'd say every 3 years at least, because the population of the town is changing, as everybody knows. The demographics of the sports use is changing. We went from 3 years ago, no flag football, to 500 flag football users. I know personally in Little League, we went from 1,000 users, or 1,000 participants in the program about 7 years ago to about 500 now. So the demographics definitely change. My thought was we need to survey those demographics every 3 years and adjust the plan accordingly. We may find we don't need another, I'll call it baseball field, because the population of those users are going down. Lacrosse has, exploded in population. Multi-use fields seem to be the best use of the land, in my mind, where you can have soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, et cetera, all at the same location, depending on how you mark the field and how you lay out the setting at the location.
Okay. But we don't, but none of that's sort of been integrated in here. That's what I was kind of looking for, is to say, what's the changing nature of uses on different kinds of sports? What's the demographics? Where are we headed? Because it seems like the game plan that you put together, and particularly even phase one, is $7 million, right? It seems like we should be planning sort of for whatever that eventuality is.
Well, the data itself, when we did the survey, did show the trends, which if you go back to actually the first presentation that the field subcommittee did, they did talk about the trends in each of the sports of whether it was gaining in population or declining in population. So we did look at that. It's a moving target.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think we saw that subcommittee stuff, so, okay.
The other findings were most of the fields in town are on school sites, and they're not protected by Parks and Recreation status. The recommendation of the study that it should be carefully administered in the future, as we've seen changes in school properties or school use, definitely affects the fields. We're constantly seeing that with what's happened and maybe what's going to happen with some of the elementary schools. Most of the study found most of the fields in town need major renovation. These fields have a shelf life. Depending on the use of them, they need replacing of facilities, whether it be dirt, whether it be turf, whether it be fencing and things like that. It doesn't last forever. My opinion, there needs to be a maintenance budget for that purpose. And the only thing I've seen in town right now that has set aside money specifically for that was the Recreation Department creating a budget of $50,000 for the last 10 years. So they now have $500,000, almost $500,000 set aside to replace the turf at the high school, just the turf itself. So they already have that money
High
that's
school, don't they have a maintenance budget?
not specifically for fields.
The school
Well,
department-
and
Responsible for the fields.
Right. And in our discussions with the superintendent, what we've been told is the schools are not responsible for maintaining outside the buildings. So typically, that's a low priority for the school, whether it be a playground or whether it be a field.
Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
I mean, they heavily use it and they're not responsible
No,
for
they're
maintaining
not.
it?
Not for the money that goes into the maintenance of the fields, correct.
And they get the first priority.
Well, that's crazy. Right?
Again, I think
I
that
mean,
goes back
If they're
to,
the primary users, it seems like they ought to be responsible for keeping it maintained. Why is it split?
I don't know why, it's
Has to do
historic, I
with
think.
the charter.
Pardon?
The charter was reformed a number of years ago. The buildings were left in the care and custody of the schools, school department, school committee, whatever. Everything outside the buildings was left to the town to take care of and to maintain. And I think this is one of the things that we have been discussing with CPC in terms of fields and recreation and what have you. The schools, they have no skin in the game. It is really, they have no impetus. And the 5 years that the last superintendent was here, it was truly a low priority. His concern was to build that junior high, and that was it. And he's gone. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Let's take.
Is that, just a question on that, is that consistent across all these towns up and down the South Shore?
Well, that goes back to the previous statement from the study that they're not controlled by a Parks and Recreation status. So some towns have a Parks and Recreation department that specifically have budgets, equipment, facilities for maintaining the parks and the recreational fields in the town. Some towns don't. That was one of the findings of the studies, that they recommend, for example, a comparable town in comparable town in size with Scituate employs full-time field supervisors that maintains the ground. I've looked at other towns of how they maintain the fields, and they have specific equipment, they have specific budgets and specific staff for the Parks and Recreation Department and who is in charge of maintaining the fields. That's become a big issue in Scituate, the maintenance of the fields, because what we've seen is the fields being overused, they're in disrepair, and quite often, there isn't money to repair them, unless you go to CPC or unless you go to I'll call it a private source, where organizations like Scituate Little League, from my personal experience, have put a lot of money into the fields over the last 10 years, over $600,000 that Scituate Little League and the Reedy Foundation have put into the fields in Scituate, the baseball fields alone.
Well, I'd be really concerned about spending $7 million and not having a maintenance budget to maintain anything we just installed.
Exactly.
I think they should go hand in hand or not at all.
And there's some
Money
data.
goes to bad.
There's some data further in the presentation in the last slide that does list out the anticipated cost or the expected cost of maintenance for that.
Okay.
It's, we're going to have to wrap it up, Dan. You've got.
Okay, I'll keep going.
because,
Sorry, I
That's
had
all right.
Sure.
monopolized this
We
conversation.
have a public hearing at 8,
Okay,
okay?
nope, I can be very quick.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the key recommendations in order were to replace the existing track and synthetic turf at the high school. That project is already underway. Create multi-use synthetic turf complex in the backfields of the high school, which will address the Title IX issue, as well as provide what I think is an additional 2 fields in that space because of the multi-use ability to take that space and use it in 3 fields where there are currently 1 field. The recommendation was to implement a maintenance plan and proposed improvements to
I would
the
move that up to your top of your
natural
list.
fields. So the hard part is the delivery of implementing the plan.
They're supposed to put the maintenance plan in there.
Pardon me?
When they're giving us the engineering, they're including maintenance.
No.
Yeah.
They give you a maintenance plan for the field?
That's
So,
one of
so
the
the
things we're
challenge is you
looking
have the
for,
plan,
yeah.
but no funds to implement
Yeah, I
it.
mean,
Correct.
I don't
Right.
have a money tree, but.
Right.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like we should be planning that, right? Otherwise, we're just be in this vicious cycle all the time.
Yes.
And one of the other things that came out with our new superintendent, because the school department, and you were at the CPC meeting when he was there, they have to start looking at the capital plan as opposed to not. And the school committee then decides, oh, well, we're not going to do that. We all have a vested interest
Yes.
in these fields, all of us. And it's not just the schools. I mean, you're right, the demographics are changing. And there are more and more people in senior softball and other forms of recreation. So it's, we all have to work together on this.
Yes.
But the most important thing, as Steve has reiterated more than once, as have I, is maintenance.
Yes, I agree.
Maintenance. And then, not that it matters at this point in time, but the track, which was put in 17 years ago, was put in incorrectly
Yes.
and was not rectified. It's too short, and it runs downhill.
Got an elevation change.
2 feet, 2 feet difference
knew
from
it
one
was
side to
wrong.
the other.
They knew it was wrong.
They knew it was wrong, they just kind of moved on.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, on that cheerful note,
I do have 2 quick questions.
quick, like a bunny.
Title IX,
Yes.
you say resolve the Title IX issue. What is the Title IX
Okay, the Title
issue?
IX issue is that the women's softball does not have a field on the campus, number one. Boys baseball has lights, they have dugouts, they have, there's something else I'm missing.
They have
But
access to
there's an inequality between the girls varsity softball and the boys varsity baseball.
And is it
that's
strictly
been
related to baseball and softball? Or are there other
Well-
Title IX issues?
Title IX is an equality issue, really. Title IX covers a lot of things, but this is an equality issue of the women not getting the same facilities as the men. That's how I describe it.
No, that I understand, but is
Yeah.
it related just to the baseball and
Yeah,
softball
'cause that's not all
facilities?
the
or are
other
there
Oh,
other
yes.
facilities?
No, well, right now, that's the big
Lacrosse,
issue.
so-
I
They all
haven't
use
heard
the
of
same
any
fields.
other
Girls
issues.
soccer will use the same field as boys, lacrosse will use the turf, and boys will use the turf.
Okay.
Right.
It's just the softball team can't use the baseball field, because the baseball field is designed differently than a
Right.
softball field.
Okay.
That's the only issue that's been brought up that I
Right.
know of.
Second question.
Mm-hmm.
What happens with the tennis courts?
With the tennis courts?
Mm-hmm.
Which tennis courts?
That's not, those aren't gonna be.
There are only
turf.
Yeah.
5.
We didn't include that. We included the fields and did not include the tennis courts as part of the study.
Aren't you responsible for the tennis courts?
Say that again?
Aren't you responsible for the tennis courts?
The Recreation Commission is, yes,
Yeah.
but that wasn't included in this study. This was just for the fields,
Well, my
recreation
concern
fields.
is that when they redo gates,
Mm-hmm.
right, those tennis courts may go away, and you need 5 of them to compete in high school.
Well,
So the question is, where do they go?
yes, that I can't answer. I don't know. We also have an issue with the JV baseball field for the boys. If you put the girls' varsity softball up on the back of the high school, JV baseball has to go somewhere. Right now, there isn't another 90-foot diamond, okay? The
that
only
addressed in your
the only
plan?
potential places you really have right now are Gates and Central Field on the other softball field. to
Has that been
convert that.
addressed in your plan?
Say that again?
Has that been addressed in your game
Yes.
plan?
Yes.
Okay. I would suggest you add the tennis courts to your game plan.
Okay. I mean, that wasn't included that wasn't part of the scope for the subcommittee.
Because the senior
But-
center,
It seems to me it's a field like any other field.
But the tennis courts weren't in jeopardy when this whole thing started. So the tennis
Right.
courts weren't on our radar until that site was
They're in
selected.
bad shape.
Yeah.
That site
It-
was selected. So,
There are a lot of moving parts. There's talk about perhaps closing one of the elementary schools. That would change that could change the plan significantly. What happens with Gates I'm sure will change the plan somewhat, depending on what they do, whether the tennis courts, the backfields, what happens with those, we don't know. So the plan is just to lay out a plan of what our recommendations are, and it's certainly something that can be adjusted over time depending on what changes.
All right.
Okay?
Quickly, are there any questions from the board?
Two questions and a comment. And the comment will come last. Is there a difference in terms of, and Ann, you can answer this too, is there a difference in terms of what CPC will support, whether it's a synthetic field or a natural field?
They can't support a synthetic field.
they
We-
can support everything under it, though.
We can support both fields, but you cannot purchase turf
The carpet.
with CPC money. So you could put a field in, they just won't pay for the turf.
Okay.
You can get state recreation grants for that too, though.
Say that again?
You can get state grants for that as well.
There's other ways
Yeah.
to get money.
So you
And
should-
and
I
again,
mean, that should
what
be explored
the rec
to-
department
to
did
the
was
maximum.
set aside money over the last 10 years to replace the turf. Everything needs replacing. I mean, what I think the maintenance plan needs is to have money set aside so we can replace and repair these fields when they start getting out of service down the road.
Well, I would
If-
suggest you have a ground-up, estimate of what the maintenance plan should be, and then fund it that way, because we shouldn't be in a place where we have to spend huge amounts of capital money, because we haven't maintained anything for a few years.
We maybe
Right.
improve the maintenance on a field rather than replace the field.
Yeah,
The big difference.
yeah. And even when you replace the fields or do a major upgrade, you still need the maintenance to come behind. You only get it for that first year you do it, and then, you have to maintain stuff.
Bill?
Question 2. I understand we're going to get a new field behind Wampatuck that's non-standard size for anything?
No, it's not a soccer stand.
I'm not sure about that, about the standard size. I understand we're getting, one of the recommendations was to take the area behind Wampatuck and make that, or improve that
Yeah.
with funding to do that. That certainly can be done. I'm not sure what the size of that would
That's
be.
being done, but it's not a standard size for either softball or football or tag.
Well, it would be a multi-use field, is my understanding. So it would be soccer, lacrosse, et cetera.
Can't be, it's
be
too
soccer.
small to be soccer.
It's too, well, it could be practice fields. So we need practice fields as well. There's two types of fields in town. One is the official size for like high school, football field, 100 yards long, et cetera, et cetera. Same with soccer. But with youth groups don't need the full-size size field to practice on. So that can be used to practice and take a load off one of the full-size fields that is being overused today.
Okay. And then the comment, I think that the baseball field behind the high school, as it is a real disaster in terms of how it's being maintained or not being maintained.
Mm-hmm.
And for sake of putting in some railroad ties or replacing the railroad ties, that could be short money to make it look and be more effective.
Mm-hmm. The baseball field?
Baseball field. Yeah, well, the railroad ties behind the bat.
Every field
Yeah.
needs some work.
Yeah.
And that was one of the findings of the study. If I could just point out the last slide, I know we're out of time here, but the last slide, we did try and identify the cost associated with upgrading the fields, if you will, or not necessarily replacing, but fixing the fields, and maintenance cost associated with that as well from the study. So it can, the difficult part is the implementation. How do you implement it? Where does the money come from? How do you allocate the money? I think the town needs to allocate money every year so that there is a regular maintenance plan for the fields, and we can refresh fields and look at the demographics of the town usage of the field to see what we have today and better use what we have today before we start looking at additional fields. We may find out we need additional fields and may have to go to other properties. But I think we can better use the fields we have today and then look at perhaps expanding into other fields.
All right, Ben, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just have, sorry, it's about the current, not to beat a dead horse, but regarding the maintenance issue. I'm just curious what's going on currently. What is the current maintenance plan or protocol? Like who
Well, I will, DPW is maintaining the fields. They do, I think, a very good job with the resources they have, okay? However, there are things beyond that need to take place. There's fence replacement, there's just general repairs for safety. Again, I look at, my experience with Little League was we used to spend about $30,000 a year on maintenance of the baseball fields alone. And that was just dirt and grass cutting.
Yeah.
DPW cuts the lawns on the baseball fields quite often, but not enough to play baseball on every day.
Right. So that's just one comment on that is another thing to take away from the field study that I think is that we haven't really talked about that I think is really important as somebody that occasionally does lawn renovations and things like that, is that it mentions that Scituate doesn't really have a fields manager,
Yes.
which a lot of other communities of this size have. I think that's a really interesting piece of this, is having somebody that can come up with the protocol and really manage the fields and have, like, it will give both that manager that will trickle down to their employees that now have a buy-in and an incentive to really make these things shine and really stand out and be the best they can be. I think that's a really important piece of it that I took away from the field study.
I agree. One of the recommendations were implied was we don't have a Parks and Recreation department. In lieu of that, I think we certainly need a manager of the facilities and somebody who's responsible to engage the services that can be applied to those.
Right.
And really try and maintain them.
Yeah, and has the authority to do, like, okay, obviously there's this issue with the school versus the recreation. Like, no, this person's the boss of all of this,
Right.
It's basically finding someone who is in charge, who can deal with it. That's what we
Well,
need.
it's
Right.
more than that, though.
No,
It's-
but
it-
that's
and-
the
An
start.
individual without any resources
And
is still
budgets.
going to leave you in the same place, right? So
And money.
He can do
You've got to
that.
have the resources to do it, no matter who you put in charge, right? And that's the piece that I think
Is missing.
needs to come across here, and if you've got a maintenance column, I think that's good. I think it ought to be hand in hand with any new development, right? Is that we've got to commit to the maintenance for it.
Patty?
My only question was, I know you've been involved with this for a long time, but who do you think needs to be in charge? Coming off of Ben's question, do you think we need a new position? Do you think that we need to create a new department? Or can this all be wrapped up under DPW in a subcategory? What is your opinion?
My personal
Yes.
opinion is I would prefer to see a Parks and Recreation department.
All right.
I would just like to say,
I don't know what
Dan
yours is.
thanked everybody but himself. He put countless hours and time. He walked every parcel of land in this town that we own up in the knee-deep water to try to figure it out. The study that was done by the third party was done as well as it was because Dan and the other people he mentioned handed them a huge amount of data on a silver platter. And the study wouldn't be where it is today, and it wouldn't have been the price it was had he not put so much time blood, sweat, and tears into collecting all the data himself. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for
Thanks.
coming in.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming in.
Yeah.
Appreciate this.
Very informative. Okay, our next item on the agenda is a public meeting, site plan administrative review for 52 Country Way, formerly Morning Glories.
Easel, there's one right there.
You want to do something?
Please.
This one right there.
Either location.
Over
Here
here or
or
here?
there, which, how does the board prefer? Do you prefer looking that way or that way?
Good.
Right this way.
Will you get that on TV? Great, thank you. All right, if you would identify yourself and tell us what's going on, please.
Paul Rodrick's Camp Construction, representing Tony Chen and Gunther Tooties. We were previously in for a site plan waiver, as everyone knows. And now we're back for a full administrative review. We have made some changes to the plan. We went in front of the design review on Tuesday, and based on the information that I got after that meeting, was that we need to do some more work on the plan to identify certain items as far as signage and changing the front elevations and a lot of the other things that were talked about at the design review meeting, based on the conversation that I had with Karen. So,
Were there minutes issued from that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Ben was at the meeting along with myself, so,
Okay.
I mean, they only met Tuesday night. It's, you know,
It's Thursday.
Really?
I think the changes that they recommended were good changes, beneficial both to the applicant and the looks of the building. Right now, the elevations that you have show the glass in the front all the way down to the bottom. And I believe the design review committee, you had a plan the other night that showed the glass.
which
up
we do have
up-
that, yes.
Up a little, and that would be beneficial for maintenance for the applicant and, you know, to help, you know, prevent rainwater and snow. It would be better for snow storage as well. So I think that would be a good change.
And some of the items that we were talking about implementing, I didn't realize that it was going to hold the project up, that these things were, yes, we'd like to see those in the project, and that is something that can be implemented. I understand, you know, the signage and things of that nature, but the, whether there's a shed roof over the cooler, so the tenants in the apartment buildings aren't looking at the top of the cooler. I mean, I look at most of the stuff as minor alterations, and the same thing with the front of the building, whether the windows are going all the way down or they're 18 inches off the floor. We're not changing the footprint of the building. The design is staying the same. We're making minor alterations to that plan. And everybody else may feel differently, and I can walk you through what we would like to do and cover the signage and all of that stuff as we go, or by item. How would you like to do it?
Have you got a game plan?
Okay.
Let's do it.
So as far as the site goes, where all the yellow highlighted areas are, we're removing, I think it's just over 5,000 square feet of permeable surface. what was brought up was that they want a landscaping plan now, which this area is already planted, this whole island, so all we would be doing is bringing more of the grasses that are in there into this area, and the same thing that's back here. The area in between 50 and 52 is covered by number 50. They're responsible for planting the trees and shrubs in this whole island area. So the only thing that we would really have to plant is this section in here. So do we really need a landscape plan for such a small area? The screening of that area, the air conditioning units, that we can screen this whole entire cooler. We can put a shed roof over it. We can put walls on the outside that have the same siding as the rest of the building, so you don't even know that there's a cooler in there. And then we were just talking about if we put a fence that came off the cooler here, along here, so that we could put the condensing units down there and nobody sees those. And we did some grass plantings and a tree or some shrubs in here. For us, we were just planning on grass in that area. One of the other discussions was moving the ordering menu board up one slot, so the cars aren't backing into there. We don't have a problem with that. I think we already covered the dumpster pad, moving location and all that stuff. This is what was the original front elevation. Don't pay attention to the signage, but these windows don't go all the way down to the slab. There's like 18 inches down there, so they're much shorter versus the plans that you currently have are showing it. The windows are more like door panels, and they're going all the way down. Design review like this, we don't have an issue with it one way or the other. When we go into signage,
Is the building height the same, or is it higher?
it's high, because right now, the roof it's almost kind of a flat roof, and it comes up to here.
So how high is the roof?
We are, give me 1 second here. I believe it's 36 feet high.
That looks like the pitch has changed. Is it just me?
No, this is, the only thing that's changed on that front elevation is these windows right here.
Okay, maybe it's just a different scale or something?
Should all be the same scale, just printed
Okay.
on different sides of paper. I don't have the height handy, but we have one set with the medium height of the roof, and even the maximum height is still below the allowed limit.
That, pull up what you just showed us. That looks far more A-frame than what we're looking at.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out.
No, I think just because you're looking at colors.
I think it's the contrast and
So
the,
right
Contrast?
here, then
They've
you
shrunk
have
it
this whole
down.
section
How
Okay,
much we can see.
that's,
all right.
This
I
is a
think with the
smaller
colored
version.
roof,
All right.
it's looking at something different, so
Okay.
there's no change there. When we go into signage, currently there is a sign out on the road, and there's a one that is on the building. So we have this sign designed for the front here. We did have some simple lettering that was going on the awning. And then on the Stockbridge side, on that dormer is the same size sign that is on the front of the building. We are removing this drive-through sign. The people have already pulled in. They know where they're going. They don't have to be looking up to find the drive-through sign. And we have directional signs that are down in the planting beds. I think that's.
So the sign to the bottom left
That
is,
one's not, this is the old rendering, this is what we were, the most recent proposal
Oh, okay.
here. We have,
oh, so we don't have those.
you don't have this, no,
Okay.
because this is what we submitted. But
Okay,
I believe what we're doing is we're going back to this window and this look, but without this sign over here.
okay.
Other questions while I'm here?
Steve?
I'm looking. I'm still looking.
All the signage is gonna use the same type lettering?
What's that?
All the signage uses the same type lettering?
It is. Yeah, it's, the letters, these letters across the front are, I think they're like 8 inches tall. I have the, and, 3 inches deep.
But they're all the same?
They're all the same. The ones below it are, obviously a smaller letter than those.
Yeah.
The, on the awning, where we have coffee bagel sandwiches, that's just printed right on the awning.
Yep.
And how far out does the awning go?
4 feet.
Karen, do you have anything you want to,
It does say that you're allowed 2 signs in the district, and, when I talked to the building commissioner yesterday, he agreed that, it is 2 signs, but they may not consider lettering on an awning a sign.
right.
So that would,
Are there dimensional requirements to the sign,
yes, there are. I believe it's no more than 100 square feet.
per sign?
Yes,
Total.
per sign,
Per
yes.
sign. And are we conforming here?
The street sign is a concern about the sign, so we need a sign on the street. The one, that's the most important sign for us. So when the people when the people drive the country way, they need to see the sign. They cannot just like drive by, there's a bagel shop there, they wanna turn around. I think that sign was the most important sign to us.
So we definitely
I'm
want
sorry, I didn't understand it. What's the most important sign?
the street sign.
They have a roadside one.
Yeah.
They have a roadside one there.
Is the roadside one to control the sign too, or it's just a different sign?
As far as I know, yes,
Ah,
as far as I know.
But the old Morning Glory, they already have a 3 sign over there. We just replaced the old 3 signs.
Where's the 3rd sign? Do they have one in Stockbridge?
I'm pretty sure they have
No,
one.
they don't have one on Stockbridge.
You know, one of the things that you need to keep in mind,
Okay.
okay?
Mhm.
If that sign
Mhm.
at the entrance is, as you have just stated, the most important sign,
Mhm.
I don't think you need the one on Stockbridge Road.
Then we can
And I
take
think
that.
you could
I think that's-
sacrifice,
Yeah.
you
yeah, it is.
sacrifice
Yeah,
that
it is.
sign,
Okay.
Yeah.
and you'll,
I thought it was 3 signs. That's why we say we try to get 3 signs. But if it allowed to only 2 signs, then we can sacrifice
Okay.
the Stockbridge one.
right.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
believe me when I tell you,
Mhm.
they will come.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like this, it doesn't look like there's any detail on that street sign.
Oh, the street sign. I do have a.
There is,
There is.
on the, because originally that was not part of the scope of what we were doing. Tony just showed me a picture that a sign guy had sent in.
My sign guy from Palma, they do all my sign. So it's Paul. I think you maybe know that Paul. So he do all my signs. He
Paul
just send me
Costas?
that. Huh?
Paul Custis?
No, it's Paul Lucas. Yeah, it's from Palma. So he actually just do the night before they send me the sign with all the glass in there. So I don't like that with all the glass coming up because this replace DFP file, so they put a sign, something like that. So we can, you know, he just sent me the why, it's like a half hour ago. So there's a sign like that. So it's similar sign.
How tall is
And
that
that's
sign?
basically the same size, shape, that's what's there.
Yeah, okay.
So I need like a printer or something, print out, just send me a half hour ago.
I'd like to
Yeah.
get an actual
We'll-
drawing
we'll-
of that
we'll take that and
with
add that to the
dimensions
page.
and kind of in
Yeah.
the space.
I already forwarded to you already, so.
All right.
That's not internally lit, right? That's externally lit, right?
That is, they have lights that shoot up at it, yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yep.
And one of the things that I really dislike, but I suppose there's nothing we can do about it, I see these signs around town, and they're internally lit, but they're inside, showing that they're open.
No, we're not gonna do
No,
that.
I
We're not
really
gonna do
find
that.
those-
We have a store in Plymouth, you know, we're not even put the open sign, anything like that. You know, I hate that too, so. it's-
Thank you.
No, my personal, I have, and I mean, like, when it come to the sign, everything, so I really picky taste.
Well, I saw
Yeah.
your store, where was I, in Pembroke?
Mhm.
And it looked very tasteful from the outside,
Thank you.
so. All right, any further questions from the board? This is going to have to be continued, there's no, they
Yeah, I
have to
think
come
we
back.
need to have the right signage. I think that moving the sign, the order sign in a little bit more will really help with the stacking distance. And there may need to be a directional, do not block, you know,
We have,
but whether it's between you who does it or 50 Country Way, there has to be some coordination between the two owners, because there are some agreements that were made during the permitting of 50 Country Way. So that has to be explored. I think we need to see where the snow storage is gonna be. I'm still waiting for comments from the fire department. We don't really know where all your utilities are tying into, but you are gonna need definitely approval from DPW for maintained sewer flow, et cetera. So I think the big thing,
We should have the fencing and/or walls or whatever, that should be laid out as well.
right, the fencing and the walls, what your dumpster enclosure is gonna be, if you're gonna have a bike rack. And if you, I think when we initially met, I indicated that the 50 Country Way project in the island is gonna be doing they owe a couple trees, and so you're gonna need to coordinate with them. And those will meet the zoning requirements for the shade trees for the parking. This length of curbing along the access and utility easement for the project that Paul proposes is longer than what was shown on the 50 Country Way plans. So,
So I'm sorry, Karen, I didn't understand. So you're saying what 50 Country Way needs to install
right,
will satisfy their shade tree requirements?
yeah,
I'm
in
talking
that,
about the curbing, like the curbing that they have only comes up to the edge of
Right.
the building.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the flow of traffic,
Yep.
we want to extend the curbing from there
Mm-hmm.
over to here.
Okay.
and it was in the front part, they were extending the curbing further to the front, but 50 Country Way, I believe, owes 2 trees in that first island and some trees and a shrub in the back island that they're showing in a different configuration. So there just needs to be a little coordination there.
And is that the requirement for this site? 3 trees?
They're showing 10 parking spaces.
Uh-huh.
50 Country Way has has 66 parking spaces, so you need 1 tree per,
Yeah.
8 or 10 parking spaces, so.
Right, but this is 52. So I guess what I'm asking is, what are
There's
they
an-
required to have?
There's a shared access and utility easement.
Uh-huh.
And so the projects were, the previous owner committed to certain stuff that 50 Country Way was going to install in the access and utility easement in this island.
Okay.
So
That
would
I
meet-
get. I'm
That
just,
would meet the requirements for.
that's what I was asking. What's the
for, I think-
requirement for this? Is it 3 trees? Is that what it is?
No, it's probably just one tree,
Just 1 tree?
yeah.
Okay. That's what I was asking.
All right.
What about roof drains?
About what?
Roof drains?
We're
Where
good.
did the water go?
We're gonna have gutters that just come down to downspouts. Currently, that's how it's happening. And then it's going into, the manholes. We weren't putting any additional drainage in because we're not creating any, more, permeable surface. Yeah, the roof has peaks, but the same amount of rain's gonna come down on that or a flat roof. And currently, they just drain across the parking lot.
Where do they drain?
They come down the sides of the buildings and they just stop at the building and they
I mean, over
drain
there.
across. Yeah, there's a drainage, out front here. And then they just installed a new one over here. So we may have to pipe through the curbing to get flow to those.
I'm thinking more of dumping water when it's getting cold and you start to ice stuff. Right, so are you avoiding your drive-through and all that? There's no
Yeah, we.
runoff there?
Because the building stops,
I know where the
Here.
building stops, but you're dumping the water out, so I guess where's the water going?
it's going over to this catch basin over here.
Pipe.
This side of the roof would go over to this side will go this way.
Piped? Or are you saying it's
No,
surface
just
flow?
across the that's how it happens, that's what happens now.
Well, how do you do it with the island?
Well, we would just pipe through the island so they come up and face the curb.
I think I need to
Okay,
look
are
at the
those in
50
there?
Country Way plans.
Are they in there?
I don't know.
Okay, we should make sure of that.
We can add this to the list.
I mean, it has to go in the same configuration as the water that was assumed to be going from the
Yeah.
from the Morning Glories building.
There also was an agreement that Morning Glories is gonna allow work to be done on drainage structures.
Yes.
Right.
Right, is that all?
I've been told that's gonna, the drainage structures, I believe, are in. I think the drain manhole is in and the tree box filter, and that's still part of the conditions that 50 Country Way has to maintain them.
Yeah,
Right.
but I just wanna make sure that we're directing the water to where we assumed it was gonna go in the first place, or where we assumed it's going now.
You're right, we have to do that.
Yes, we should make sure that gets on the site plan. Even if it's being installed by somebody else. I don't know if it is.
All right, any,
With respect to the planning plan, right, I think there should be one plan that shows everything that's gonna be done.
I agree. I don't think we should wait till after the fact to get a planting plan. I think we should have a plan now.
I think all that Gunther Tooties was going to do was some stuff in the back. They weren't going to do what was already committed to.
That's
So
fine.
I think that
So
they
whatever
should be
stuff they're gonna
showing-
do in the back, show it.
Right, show it,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
I agree.
all right, Patty?
What are your hours of operation?
We, maybe 5 to 6. 5 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. Something like that.
With the speaker box, with apartments?
But they're moving it.
Yeah, or out further, away from the building?
Where's the speaker box going?
Yeah.
We're gonna move it one stall further away, so you're moving, 15 feet further down.
The speaker box is not that, it doesn't make any noise or anything, even we
No, it's the
speak.
people yelling at it.
Yeah,
People in the car, yeah.
Because,
I'm sure I could wake a few people up.
because, like, couple feet, you can't hear anything.
No, I would agree with that. I think it's more about people
Yeah.
not hearing and
And
yelling or
people,
ordering,
yes,
that
people
kind
do
of
yell all
stuff,
the
yeah.
time, yeah.
And
We
we
heard
used
that.
people in the car, not the people in the building.
Yeah. But in general, especially like Scituate, we don't
Pretty
have.
much
many
you'll have the car between the apartments and a speaker box, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think if
That-
I were in the apartments, I'd be more concerned about the train idling.
That's true too.
So-
Mhm. Lots of noise down there.
I'd
Right.
be
There'd
more
be a
concerned
noise.
about the line, I'd get over there faster.
All right, that's all I wanted to ask.
Ben?
Yeah, a couple of things. One we touched on, but I'll just reiterate. It wasn't really in their purview, but design review committee brought up a good point regarding traffic, and Karen brought this up too. But when you drive in the city and you know it's technically a law, you're not supposed to block the box, and sometimes that's demarcated through striping or signage or something. That's the precise issue that was kind of pointed out in this plan, is that if the drive-through does happen to back up, and that's why we're moving the speaker sign forward, that potentially people could be blocking the egress from the parking spaces farther back at 50 Countryway where people are trying to get out. So just, I mean,
We can
the
manage
applicants
that.
already mentioned that they're going to sign that, but that was just something I wanted to point out. And then
There isn't really anywhere for anybody to go if they're coming up and they're stopped, right? They can't back up, right?
exactly like that. I mean,
So
yeah.
there's really not much you're gonna do about it, right? It's gonna be blocked if it backs up that
either
far.
direction, right? One
Right.
direction, yeah.
I mean, even if you tell people don't park there, they don't have anywhere to go,
yeah.
right?
No, I know, but they can stop on the inside of, they can stop here. You don't want them stopping here and blocking the out.
Right.
So if they were stopped here until this spot was free, then they make the turn. And they're not blocking the outside. I think that's what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, I could see too, though, like if they're stopped, they're going to block with people incoming, but presumably getting out is the important piece of it, right? If you're
Yeah.
coming in, you're either waiting in line or you're just getting back to your house. So I mean, there's no,
It's definitely worth a try.
yeah,
Yeah, and we know not everybody pays attention to signage, but
Right.
we can put one up there to
yeah.
try to help the issue.
And then my only other thing was, I don't know how much you.
So, I'm sorry, are you putting a sign there, or are you just painting on the road?
No, we'll do a signage, because we have these drive-through entrance signs over here, and here, and we'll do, from a visibility standpoint, if they're turning in here, whether the sign's better faced over here or here, so that they're not blocking the roadway.
I've seen it done where they actually paint that area, and it says "Do not block" on it.
Hash mark the road.
Yeah, I don't know which one's more effective, but
Let's cover the
if you
snow.
drive out to, out Wollaston Beach direction, right, they have that right by the police station.
Blue.
Yeah, it says "Do not block," right? That might be more effective than a sign that
Mm-hmm.
people aren't looking at, but.
And that might be coordinating with the project next door too. I don't know what the
Right.
easement is in
I
there.
was thinking, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I was thinking, I talked to Paul, if this project become very headache for everybody, so I think we maybe go back to the original plan, forget the whole thing, we just run raise out inside and get it going. So that's my original plan, because all the sign, this become, time consuming, so we has been, try to get this thing going, for quite some time. So, I thought just like a minor alteration, it basically, we try to do like, we get one side going to the side, so you can another plan wait for another 2 more way, so another issue coming out, so I don't know how long we're gonna take that. So, and then my seller is not gonna keep winning. So that's the point. We say, we already have a couple of conversations with them last night.
So is there a way to get conditional approval based on all of the information that we talked about?
It sounds like we're waiting for a lot of stuff.
We can put a contingency on that, something like a 50 Countryway. So we don't meet those conditions, we're not gonna grant a permit. So basically, at least we can get something moving forward.
Are you
Because
gonna rip the building down?
Yes.
The,
Well,
yeah,
the-
basically, yes,
That's
because
the
of
plan today,
foundation,
but
that's
he
the
doesn't
plan
have to.
today. But, if the plan is not like become, like headed for everybody, so we maybe just say, what? We just keep the way it is, we just do the, renovation inside, we're not even rip the building down, we just get it going. So I can do that, we could save a lot of money, but it would be huge, we talked to condo last weekend. We talked to the guy. I don't know. He's on vacation. So we have a meeting probably next week. So we try to coordinate everything together. We try to get the snow plowing and everybody together. So, but, and also it's a money issue, it cost me lots and lots of money. So we wrote the whole thing down, everything. But I want the building look good, look perfect, but, if, we can't just keep sitting there and waiting. But, LCO, already called me, her mom was sick in Brazil. She wanna get the deals done, because without the permit, I'm not gonna say the paper. So, that's the whole thing start there. So I don't know how long it's gonna take. 2 more weeks, another 2 more weeks?
Well, we understand your predicament, but
Yeah,
we
I
have to treat
No, I understand
everybody equally in town.
No.
And this is what we were told that you wanted to do. And so that's why we
I'm
were
not
trying to do.
I understand, and you really cooperate everything, you are so nice to us. So I'm not trying to argue with you. I would just say, if we can grant a permit, we can put all those contingencies inside that, so we still can get it going. So, we don't meet those conditions, then you're not gonna grant a permit. That, just something like a 50 country way, we can do that way. At least I can certify the, LCA will say, why? So we got the permit, so we had a lot of contingency we had to meet, but we can take time to deal with that.
And
So
that way, we can start
We
the
can
process
start the
of-
process
for
of
the
everything.
building
Because,
permit itself.
He has been waiting for 2 months already. He texts me every day. I feel so bad, and we say, we gotta get the permit done. So originally, we tried to just run raising the whole thing, but I know the store is too small. And inside with the foundations, 2 different foundations inside. And then we figure out maybe we can go higher. So Paul told me, I don't think there's any problem going high because the bush block. So all of a sudden we found out the foundation just built on the start. We can't put a second storage. So that's why we try to do the right thing. But I just don't know how long it's gonna take that, to get that going.
Well, I think you've got the list of things that if the next plan comes up in the next 2 weeks, we've got them all listed, then we can make a decision, right?
Right.
But right now, we're gonna have to write a heck of a long laundry list of conditions, and you're probably not gonna like it because there's not much you're gonna really wanna do until you satisfy all the conditions, right? So,
Yeah,
so it seems to me we've listed these all out, that it seems like those can all be addressed in a couple weeks, right? It seems like it's one modification.
It needs to be addressed in a couple of days so that we can get the plans back in next week to make the next meeting in 2 weeks.
Well, that's probably better than us trying to write all that down
Yeah.
in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you can take 2 days and get that all done and get the plans in,
Yeah.
I would say, we'll, as long as we've got what we need, then we can make a decision next, in 2 weeks. But it seems like there's a lot of open items here, so.
Yeah.
And I, for one, don't want to sit here and try to write each condition for
Yeah.
all these items right now.
Have you spoken to 50 Country Way yet?
I spoke to 50 Country Way, yeah, and she said, oh, Tony, he tried to call me, I tried to call him, so, because they put a dumpster, everything inside, so, so we told him we need to move this, and we're gonna fence out everything. He says,
And
I don't want,
I sent an email today saying that you were fencing the property today, and you would really like to talk to them. I put that in an email, and I gave him Paul's email address.
Yeah,
So hopefully they can be that coordination.
it's funny, I called them last Saturday, and I told them, oh yeah, I'm on vacation, I make sure that, everything be removed, and you can come here on Wednesday, put all the tape, everything, so in case some worker, they park over that side. We said, sure, we got the Wednesday, Tuesday, they're still there, so.
I understand your frustration.
Yeah.
I really do. And because time is money, and that's the way it is. If you get it all together, 2 weeks from now, which is the
What is the next meeting, is the
23rd.
23rd,
Is next meeting is 23rd?
23rd.
It's the 23rd, yep.
If you can hang on until the 23rd, you have all your ducks in a row, then I think it will go,
Okay.
all right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
Just
thank
go
you.
through the laundry list and get
Right.
it all on the plan.
On the
right?
plan,
They,
and
that's including the sign on the.
I have most
No,
of
you
it
have to
down.
apply for a sign permit after.
Afterwards,
Yeah, of course, yeah,
after
yeah,
the
the
fact.
pole, the
But I
pole,
mean,
yeah.
just, I mean.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Let's get the sign design on the set.
Right.
Patty
No,
wants-
I know, we, because, we do the, I open a lot of store, you know what I mean, so we same
Right.
thing with the fast food too. So I know how those process go, and, I respect the time, you know what I mean, I try to do everything I can too, you know what I mean?
Right. Oh,
Try
I
to,
think
but,
part of the
you know,
problem
we
is
just-
50 Country Way, but
I
we won't
just-
go down that road. Patty?
I don't want you to sacrifice a really pretty building.
No, I don't want to
Yeah,
either. I
yeah.
talked to my wife, you know, my wife would say, why you do all those work, you know, we can, you know what I mean, just, you know what I mean, go around, get the open, you know what I mean? So, but, you know what I mean, and we just say, hey, you know what, they're probably my, retirement, you know what I mean, over there, so, I wanna.
Probably get a lot more business with this building than the old one.
And I appreciate that you're trying to make it a nicer looking building.
So I have most of the stuff written down. Can you email me over the entire list of what you have?
I gave you a list this morning.
Yeah.
It's right out of the site plan review requirements in the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
Should go through hers, since she's coordinating, but.
All right.
You should try to make sure if the fire department has anything to say, they do it quick.
Right.
They told me they were gonna review it today. They've been,
Okay. No, just try to get it back to them.
right, and that's why, yes, I will.
And if they don't say anything, then we're just gonna move on without them.
Right,
Right.
yes. But that's why you have, you have the entry and you have the back from the 50 Country Way project.
Yep.
Because the concern of blocking the, the entry.
All right,
Okay.
okay.
See you in 2 weeks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
We need a motion to continue.
I'll entertain a motion to continue.
Let's just go.
Hold on. I move to accept the applicant's request to continue the site plan administrative review public meeting for the proposed gun tunis at 52 Country Way until August 23rd, 2018,
What time?
How about 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock.
at 8, okay?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, appreciate it.
All right.
Wow, 2024?
6 years.
What's next?
What's next is,
Update on
on Seaside at Scituate.
Seaside at Scituate.
Where's that?
Having a clue.
Follow the water, around the corner.
Follow the dirt on the road?
Yeah, and through the woods. All right, Mr. Orenberger?
Hi, Bill Armberg, I'm just here to, I've spoken extensively with Karen about this, but just to listen in, if there's any information which you need. The Toll Brothers own the site as of Tuesday. I got over to Karen the deeds relating to that. And there's a number of things that are moving along in progress. I spoke today with town council, called me about the bond, and I understand between the consulting engineers and the DPW, they are still looking at the substance of that, but as far as to form, town council is making some red line things, which she is going to.
You say substance, you mean the dollars?
Dollar amount, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know that's still being worked out. One of the things that, speaking with town council, I shouldn't say for some reason, the planning board's name was on the bond to sign that. I said that's not necessary, so that's been deleted. And so I'm awaiting town council on that, and I guess the town is waiting on Horsley Witten and the DPW.
Karen?
Yeah, we have a hard copy of the deed. They did close. We're waiting for a letter from Water and Sewer that basically says the contractor pulls the permit for the street opening permit, but the sewer is allocated and the water is allocated. But this time of year, you run into some problems with vacations. I've been told we're getting them next week. The site, the special permit, stormwater permit, and the A&R, and the order of conditions have been recorded. The plans were not endorsed prior to recording, but at this point, it's recorded. That's, to me, is the most important thing. We asked for the conditions to be put on a plan. I would like that to still be done so that it's available at the site in the trailer when the contractors, et cetera, need that. We
So
have-
is that underway?
That, I believe, is underway. We have a NIPDIS permit, and the stormwater pollution prevention plan. Horsley Witten is reviewing that under the first contract, and just for plan conformance. We'll be having Horsley Witten for our consulting engineer for phase 1. I hope to be on the selectmen's agenda on August 21st for a signed contract because the estimated cost is approximately $90,000. So that's something over $50,000 the selectmen have to sign. That's a draft contract, is in the works right now.
Karen
And they
mentioned-
will be getting a check to us next week.
Yeah, we're gonna FedEx a check so the treasurer can cash it, deposit it pending the selectmen's approval of the contract.
Right. We have a construction schedule, which you all have in your folders, which was, it closely relates to what the plans say. As everyone understands, a construction schedule is a moving target based on weather conditions, et cetera, but that's pretty much how it relates to the drawings. And town council is reviewing the bond language. We'll have, it's some minor changes, and Horsley Witten is reviewing the amount. We should have that by early next week. Those were the things that were required prior to scheduling the pre-construction conference. I am going to tentatively schedule the pre-construction conference for the 28th because I need to get enough people there who have important roles. Police was part of your conditions, fire was part of your conditions, so there's a lot of people to be at this pre-construction conference, which will probably be held at Town Hall. So I think we're 90% there. They'll be delivering checks for Conservation Commission for their surety as well next week.
Are
along
those
with-
numbers already set?
Conservation's already set.
Question
So-
for you.
Yep.
Has the DEP been notified
Been notified of what?
of the remediation work, which was part of the requirements?
I will confirm back with Karen, but I am told that that is so. One of the challenges you have is Dave Buckley, who's project manager, his wife had a baby at 1 o'clock this morning. And 2 other people are out of state. But I'm told that everything as far as the remediation is, that it's supposed to be done, it has been done. And
Okay, would you
the
confirm that?
groundwater samples have been taken, and and all those things. But I will find out and get back to Karen with that.
I mean, some of that was supposed to occur within 120 days of owning the property. They just owned the property this week, so.
No, I just want to know what the
Right.
plan is here. If
Right,
they
I mean,
haven't, then when are
need
they going to?
They need to
Right.
follow the conditions in the special permit. So we need conformance with that, and I'm not aware, I'm just gonna remind everyone about condition 39, conformance to the DEP noise policy. And there'll be there's no additional work on the site until after the pre-construction conference.
Yeah, it looked like you got a little ahead of yourself.
Say again?
Looks like you got a little ahead of yourself in doing work.
What they did is they put down some sedimentation control, and when they talked to Karen, they stopped putting down sedimentation control. See, one of the things is under the order of conditions, the order of conditions actually explicitly directs to put down sedimentation control before their pre-construction meeting. But that is different from what you have, so based
Right.
on that.
You said no work, right?
Right. And
We
there's-
said no work, right? So,
There's no additional work that's gone on the site since we told them to stop. They understand that, and they are following that. Our consulting engineer will be prepared to go out to the site, I believe, after the pre-construction conference, to look at some of the stuff that's already been done out there.
okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your list. You got any more?
No, we just thought it would be a good idea so that everybody knows the project is gonna be starting by the end of the month, and just that, what, the conditions are being met and will be met in the next few weeks.
Okay.
And then
I think that's good.
construction will start, and, we do have other construction projects going on in town as well. So they will be providing us with all their names and addresses and telephone numbers per the planning board special permit of 24-hour contacts, et cetera, just like we require on all the planning board jobs.
Is the work trailer out there, is that the primary location where the project manager is?
For the time being, once they get into the main project, they'll move that into the principal site. But for weather conditions, for coordination with town official consultants or whatever, you need some place if it's raining, so.
Right. That's what I was asking. Is that the primary the
That's
one they
all.
have installed?
Yeah, that's all they have right now, it's just a temporary site.
So they're
until-
going to move it up further?
Yeah.
Okay.
There may be 2 trailers initially. One for contractors, they may have a temporary sales office as well.
The other thing is, Toll Brothers will coordinate with Karen, they are gonna have a ceremonial groundbreaking, not a physical groundbreaking, where we'll talk with Karen, any town officials who wanna be present at that, they'll try to coordinate that,
Great.
Gold shovels?
something like that.
Could I ask a broader question here? I saw the mitigation agreement signed with the Board of Selectmen, and was quite surprised to see that the sewer mitigation payments are being trickled out over multiple years. How is that going to affect the ability to do I&I work?
Say
That
again?
was supposed to create the capacity. How's that going to help do the I&I work that's going to supposedly create the capacity?
Town is also applying for a grant tomorrow and tying in a couple projects for a Mass Works grant. And so some of that may be tied
I know, but
into that grant.
May or may not get that grant, right? So
Right, but so-
the question was, when we first talked about this, that the mitigation money was intended to be provided up front so that the town sewer department could do I&I work, right, which would free up capacity. It sounds like at $14,000 a building permit, it's gonna take 4 years to get that much money.
Well, 2 things.
And I'm just wondering how that happened.
That has been the ask and the agreement with the selectmen for over 2 years now. So
What has?
There's nothing new about that, the timing of the payment of the sewer, all right?
I believe we talked about it here, that it was intended to provide I&I in the special permit hearing.
I was at that meeting. And at that meeting, it was 1.2 million. And maybe I just didn't understand what was going on, but it just seemed to me that it was indicated that that 1.2 would go to hopefully upgrade one of the pumping stations as well as I&I. I felt I understood that the 1.2 million would be paid up front for this. I do not remember anyone saying it would be parceled out each time a building permit was issued. That was my understanding, sitting there listening. That has changed?
It's never changed, Ian. That's what it is, but to be frank with you, the decision as to the timing of that is governed not by us, by the selectmen, by town council, okay? One of the things that the Toll Brothers did do was they accelerated within whatever, it's 45 days, they're gonna pay $200,000. Initially, that was going to be paid over a couple of increments, and I encourage them to pay that all in a lump sum up front. As far as the other things, and again, they'll remain cooperative to help if the town has certain needs, they'll help address those.
All right, I just have to say that when I read the mitigation agreement, I was truly disappointed, really. And that's, what I heard and what was written is not one and the same. And maybe.
Well, it doesn't jive with the discussion we had here in the special permit hearings about providing that in order to create or reduce I&I. That was part of the
Well, do you know-
benefit of it, right? You're not gonna do that at $14,000 a clip every other month, right?
Well, it depends if 120 days from now, you apply for 40 permits, you can do the math on that one.
Yeah, that's,
It's $500,000.
I'll believe that when I see it. And even so,
Well-
I don't see how it gets them where they were expected to go.
All I can say is for a 2-year period, we've been asking the town as to what is the sequencing, what do they want, and if you ask right now what I&I work they have planned, there isn't any right now.
All right, we can run around this
Sure.
all over the place, and it's
I
done.
just have to say I'm disappointed in what I thought the understanding was.
And I'm disappointed as well.
Spreading it out over 4
But-
years is probably a loss of $150,000, $200,000 to the town.
But it's done, and we're not the sewer, nor are we the water commissioners,
They still work for the town.
so it is what it is. There's nothing we can do. But I'm entitled to be disappointed.
Understood?
Thank you. All right, is there anything else?
Not with regard to Seaside at Scituate
All right.
update.
And I think it's probably a good idea that, not necessarily once a month, but maybe once every so many meetings, we do have an update. This is the biggest item to come to town in ages. And so we need to keep right on top of what's going on. So we'll expect
We can
something.
work with the applicant to schedule those, and.
Maybe once every 6 weeks or every other month to get, I mean, I know this is going out 5 years, but we just need to be kept informed.
Absolutely.
My mantra is communication. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Orenberger,
All right,
thank you.
thank you very much.
Anybody here on the board have anything they want to say?
No.
All right, thank you. Our next item is approve minutes.
No minutes.
No minutes. Accounting.
I move to approve the requisition of $1,625 to Merrill Corporation for pre-construction and site inspections at 4 Union Street, to Merrill Corporation for $1,300 for engineering peer review and site inspections for 92 Neilgate Street, to Chester Consulting Services LLC for $120 for 50 Country Way on-site construction meeting, to American Planning Association for $397 for membership dues for Brad Washburn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Liaison reports.
DRC met this week. You guys already know it was about Countryway, and then the other topic we already talked about in here, which was the preliminary meeting with the fire department regarding the new Humrock station, and they talked a little bit about the new radio tower too, even though it's not really. It was just a kind of a update from the fire department about projects that are coming in. ZBA, Karen brought this up at the last meeting because they were meeting that night. There was a pretty big change to the Herringbrook Meadow 40B, so it's like one building. They're not doing the underground parking, so the beat goes on with that one. And water resources, I wasn't able to make the last meeting, so I got to catch up with them on that.
Bill?
No, nothing.
ABC, met Wednesday night, and there were a number of people from North Scituate, neighbors type of thing. And as has been pointed out, nothing much is, when, the applicants were here for the position, nothing much is gonna happen in North Scituate until we have sewer. So that's, and they're voicing their concerns that North Scituate looks pretty tattered. It really does, and something needs to be done. The poles that are there are missing, the paint is flaking off, some of them are broken and gone. So that was a discussion. And I believe in October, there will be a meeting of anyone who's interested for North Scituate, probably at the library in October, to talk about visioning for North Scituate. So that's what happened.
Yeah, who owns the building, the big building in the parking lot?
That's David Ford. He owns that building. Artemis Realty Trust and PB and somebody or other own the block on Country Way.
Okay, yeah.
And then you have Scituate Realty Trust that owns a few buildings, and then there are itty-bitty little bits and
Who owns
pieces.
the bank?
I don't know who owns the bank. It's not Wilder Brothers, and Hingham Institute claims it's not them. So I have no idea who owns the bank. And that will be a loss. Huge loss. They close on the 15th of September. They're gone.
One other thing, we had a meeting this past week to discuss enforcement. And sort of the long and the short of it is that it appears with respect to Riverway, we have sort of limited options. And that a part of it is a result of, just how things were structured in the original permit in allowing them to sort of push that piece to the back. What town council sort of suggested was that, well, you may not have some enforcement leverage in a standard sort of review, a subdivision review or whatever. It is possible to create an MOU that goes along with the approval. And she had committed to giving us a couple of examples of those MOUs. I don't know where that stands right now. But she'd committed to giving us some examples of what those things might look like that would allow us to put maybe much more specific conditions and enforcement requirements, if you will, into the decision. So I guess I'm looking forward to seeing that.
She was working on reviewing the bond language, I know,
Right.
for Toll Brothers.
No, I'm just saying we just should
Don't
make,
have anything
we should
yet.
remind her.
I will remind her, yep.
And then she was gonna do one other thing too.
What's an MOU?
What's that?
Memorandum of understanding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, memorandum of understanding. So it's sort of kind of the way I read it, it was almost like supplemental conditions or something, right? And then she was gonna do one other thing.
Yeah, she was gonna get back to us on maybe memorandums, or maybe she suggested possibly fines too.
Fines, yeah, she was gonna look at what her finding authority
She was
was.
gonna look at fines.
Yeah.
Maybe if this isn't done by X date, you get X fine, et cetera.
Right. But this has nothing to do with Riverway. This is
No,
going
this is just
forward.
for
In
special
general.
permits, things that we deal with in general. She's looking at it for a multitude of projects.
Yeah. I won't go into anything else she said, because I would assume that's attorney-client privilege, so.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, is there anything else?
Karen?
We have been very busy, as you can see. Curtis Estates is under construction, and today, we, basically, they found some big boulders that really were better to be left in place in detention basin 4, and the engineers have confirmed, they supplied calculations to our engineer that just by raising an outlet, volume in the 100-year storm and rate is maintained. So that's, to me, is an insignificant change, and the intent is still met in the project. I believe they are asking to come in next time and just discuss a condition or two with you.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand what you said. So that they're raising an outlet? Is that what they're doing?
They're raising just by 0.2, so that we still have the volume, the proper volume for the boulders that were, it makes.
So the outfall's going up a little bit?
Yeah, just a little bit,
Okay.
but it's not, the engineers, your engineer, the town engineer has confirmed that, our consulting engineer, that it's insignificant, everything is under.
No, that's fine. I was just trying to understand what they were changing, that's all.
Under control. 50 Country Way is still working. I guess, I did send an email today after I spoke to Paul whatever, how he says his last name, and they did put fence up around their property today, and, I mean, he told me that Tony's been trying to call 50 Country Way. I kind of thought that the public access easement we agreed was going to be at our, need to be done before occupancy of Building B, because it was along that side of the road. And I kind of thought it was supposed to have brick along from Country Way all the way to the fire access, but technically the drawings don't show that. And I just kind of wondered what the board thought you approved.
Yeah, I think it's continuity. I think if you're gonna start with the brick, you end up with brick.
There's the public sidewalk that goes,
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to go back and remember whether we discussed that or not. I know we wanted the public access to
Right.
go through, and frankly, creating that public access probably should be done after they're done construction and everything,
Right, so I mean-
people aren't walking through there, right? So,
But it's
but
gonna
I
be
don't
the
remember
sidewalk.
I don't remember what we said about the,
I don't think we actually addressed it. I think,
yeah, we
at
may
least
not
I,
have asked one way or the other, huh?
well, there is a
it
detail on the drawings,
shows a detail.
and there is I mean, I
I
just
just
kind
don't
of
remember
thought.
discussing it, I guess, so.
Okay, then, I think what we're gonna get is what we get.
Yeah, but I think continuity,
I would think
would
continuity would be.
maintain the brick
Well,
gets
let's
put all the way.
request that they do that.
Okay.
I mean,
Can we do
that
that?
was my assumption. I mean, if you start out with brick, you end up with brick.
It would seem like you'd want to maintain so people know that they're
Yeah.
on the path, right?
The yellow brick road?
Is it yellow?
All right, Karen?
One other item, so I'm gonna try to be on the selectmen's agenda for the contract, and, the agenda is already looking pretty full on the 21st. Would it make more sense, is everybody available on September 4th to have a joint meeting? That's the Tuesday night with the Board of Selectmen to appoint an alternate member, and then I can find out, and if we can talk, we listed on the agenda for next time to discuss what you want to do. Because we'll
I can
need to
do the
make a
4th.
recommendation.
Do we all need to be there? Is that the idea?
Yeah, because it's a 1-for-1 vote.
Okay.
I have to double check that. I'll email you tomorrow.
Okay, if people can let me know if they are available the 4th.
It's okay with me.
Fourth works for me.
Okay. I mean, because you want to have your vote, everybody wants to have a vote count. There's 5 of you, 5 of them, so.
And you'll look into how we can discuss.
I will look into that, and we can figure that out next time.
Okay, great. Are you all set?
I think that's all we need to.
Okay. Steve, you have anything else?
I'm just seconding Bill's motion.
Well, there you go.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You're done.